No mai, hoki mai. I declare this meeting of the Wastewater Treatment Plant and Landfill Joint Committee open. Members are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed and to please use your microphones. We will start with our karakia, which is on the board now. Toru whā. Whakatakatahau ki te uru, whakatakatahau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tā tara ki tai. E hi ake ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, Māori order. Thank you, kia ora. Committee members, I'm going to take an unusual step before we proceed any further to give a reflection and clarification as chair moving forward. There will be no debate on this matter, and more importantly, this should not be seen as a reflection on any individual. The last meeting of this committee, there was a segment of questioning that led me to having to meet with representatives of Wellington Water and Porirua City Council, and I've also engaged specific members of the committee in order to try to resolve the issues raised. I do not want to go into detail of the incident, so I'll put that to the side. My reflection has led me to two conclusions which, as chair, I will now detail. First, no one should be made to feel like their own personal and ethnic identity should be brought into the business of the meeting. I want to say that officers and representatives from Wellington Water, that on behalf of this committee, the sincere regret that it had come to that for them. I also want to make it 100% clear that our line of questioning must focus on the role of the plant's operations and systems involved. Committee members are charged to get answers from Wellington Water and Council as part of our duty to accountability and transparency. Sometimes we are not happy with your answers, and that is the reality in which we live. I think committee members know how to stay on the right side of the touchline, and I expect them to do so in future. That leads to my second point. Nevertheless, as I have said several times from this space, I admire a referee that does not have to blow the whistle on every breach of the rule book and allows a free-flowing game. My failing was that everyone else on the field also understood that too. So I think that for the remainder of my term, I'll be focusing more intently on the standing orders, and it may mean that what I may have allowed in the past may not be able to do so from now on. If I am to do my job in maintaining good order, it is important for me to make clear with everybody before we get going. Kia ora. Okay, let us move to apologies. I have apologies from Porirua Kelly for lateness. I will move that. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Mike, just close when it comes to the councillor. Councillor Duncan with the seconder. So all those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, abstentions. Carried. Thank you. We are now moving into public forum. Item 3. We have 3 individuals here for public forum. Each speaker has 5 minutes to speak, including questions from the committee. A bell will be rung at the 4-minute mark. At the 4-minute mark, and again at the 5-minute mark. Members can ask questions of clarification only and cannot enter into debate with speakers. Speakers should take note of the restrictions in standing orders, including that the topic of the public forum must fall within the terms of reference of the committee. A speaker cannot speak on an issue that they have previously spoken about, and that matters which are subject to separate hearing processes must not be discussed. With all that said, I will ask Michelle Wachowski to come forward to speak in the public forum. Wellington Water officials are here. We're just having trouble trying to get everybody into the room, so we're going to have them here for the item in question. We'll let Mari go first.
Yes, on. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mari Wright, and I've lived down by the Surf Club in Titahi Bay for 57 years. What I'm going to say today, I spoke on previously, but because there was no action, I've got some points today, and also on my presentation, there's another picture of the effluent that's coming out of the pipes in Titahi Bay, and this was only taken a fortnight ago with heavy rain. So as the Council and Wellington Water no longer sample at the South End Beach or Bay Drive pipes, there can be no comparison between recent readings and previous ones. No sampling, no data. Our children continue to play in the pipes and streams where E. coli levels must be high and need to be protective. Health and safety regulations state the Council have an obligation to at least identify and minimise the risks. Signs warning of pollution at these 3 mainstream outlets should be a minimum. No sampling, no data. There are current beach pollution signs in the middle and at each end of Titahi Bay Beach, where there is pedestrian, road access and parking areas. These used to be turned over to indicate when there had been a partial or full discharge from the treatment plant into the ocean and there was pollution in the bay. Unfortunately, this has not been used since June 2024. In June, I spoke with a representative from Wellington Water, Nick from Tawa, who used to regularly turn the signs over. He informed me that this would now be done by Veolia Water and that they would be turning the signs over to inform the public about any pollution. Veolia have failed to turn the signs over and do regular sampling. No one seems to be taking samples now. No sampling, no data. There should be sampling at the South End Beach, Toms Road and Bay Drive, weekly sampling in the summer and fortnightly in the winter. Are Eurofins still analysing the sampling and is there a new provider? Today, Tuesday, the 26th, at 11:45, Eurofins came down to the beach and took samples from South End, Beach Road and Bay Drive, but said it was not the sampling from other bay areas. It was
for the beach monitoring.
for the beach monitoring. Please reinstate the full sampling and turn the signs over for visitors and locals. The beach is really popular now with busloads of children and loads of people 7 days a week and in the evenings. There was also a flow meter engaged behind the South End boat sheds, which has been removed. This means there can no longer be data comparison with wastewater flows in this area. And Michelle and I were part of an independent review in December of 2021 of the Regional Wastewater Plant Operating Manual, and we were interviewed by Rowley Forrest and Jadrim as part of Your Bay, Your Say. This is our beautiful beach and God's creation. Very soon it will be like Porirua Harbour, unswimmable and with very little sea life. We are now paying huge rates. We're getting all the wastewater from Johnsonville to Porirua Bay to be processed in a treatment plant and pump stations of an adequate size and infrastructure. What do the residents have to do to make the council see we have had enough? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murray. There's still a little bit of time if anyone wants to ask a question. Representative Allen.
Thank you, Murray. Just one quick question. Did Wellington Water tell you why they're no longer sampling at the South End?
No, they didn't.
Okay. Or why the flow meter was removed?
No, no one has.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Murray, it doesn't appear to be. Thank you very much for coming into the public forum.
Thank you, Jeff.
Michelle, would you like to go next?
Can I just clarify? About the beach monitoring? That monitoring has started, so that's going to be every week, isn't it?
Yes, I spoke with Eurofins this morning.
So that's going to be weekly. So there will be monitoring for beaches, but what Mari was referring to was the treatment plant monitoring. And as you would have read in your report, Wellington Water report, that there were a lot of discharges and malfunctions in July, and she's saying there was no monitoring for that. So that's what she was referring to.
And the signs weren't turned over.
And the signs weren't turned over, which is a breach of consent.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I haven't allowed that to be in the time, so your time will start now and we'll go from there.
Oh, can I start now?
Yes.
Okay. Is Wellington Water able to get in the building?
They will be joining us for the item, but this is public forum, so this is your space to speak.
Well, this speaks about their report, so it would have been good to have them here. Anyway, I'm Michelle Warshawski. I'm a member of Titahi Bay Residents Association. Mari Wright and I emailed 18 questions from the Wellington Water report to councillors for this meeting a week ago in good faith as a courtesy to the councillors to seek answers from Wellington Water, giving all parties concerned time to see these questions and to respond before or at this meeting, what we requested at this meeting, if possible. We did this because the public are forbidden to ask questions at the treatment plant and network meetings, questions which the public should have an opportunity to ask at a public meeting and be answered. Standing orders in Porirua serve the people's representatives and those employed, but are ultimately there to effectively silence the public voice. These 18 questions didn't need to be asked had the report been to a higher standard. Wellington Water reports are consistently non-transparent, non-accountable, poorly written, and a frustrating read, quite frankly. Point 9. There is an exceedance of ammonium nitrate more than 5 consecutive times since May, and a report is due at the end of November. Well, this nitrate comes right into the shoreline Titahi Bay. We asked, will the report be available for the meeting? And point 19, the Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant Services Contract Review on the poor performance of the treatment plant is available, but also not attached. Yesterday, a response from the CE's office saying these questions and 8 more required time for research. Are these 2 reports ready or not? Are Wellington Water doing more research? It's not clear when we'll have these reports. This is a common occurrence with these Wellington Water reports to councillors. Key reports mentioned but not attached. Links provided but no explanation. Capital projects promised but no dates of completion. Sweeping statements, but no data to evidence. How many billable hours is it costing the ratepayer for this inefficient process and poor quality information that we are getting every quarterly meeting? The Post today, Tom Hunt's article, Learned Helplessness, the non-existent asset management, consultants managing other consultants, spending $600,000 a year to get contractors to run capital projects when it could do the same with 2 staff members at half the cost. In July, Wellington Water, an abject failure in leadership and governance. The key findings from the independent review in December 2021 that cost ratepayers $101,000. Wellington Water has not been sufficient in management, not sufficient in training. Asset management is a concern for all treatment plants. And despite funds being made available by client councils, capital projects have not been delivered in the treatment plants in a timely manner. For example, the Porirua UV upgrade, which was deferred for years. And to date, the new system is still not working sufficiently. And nothing has changed, except more expensive reviews on infrastructure assets that are poorly managed by Wellington Water, who blame their operations and maintenance contractors, Veolia. We have a genuine intent and a right to seek understanding and clarity to the ever-present and increasing public health and safety risk at Titahi Bay. So, this record of this communication, and along with supporting evidence, will be sent to the Chief Ombudsman as part of their public survey investigating Wellington Water. We would like you to add both Murray and my presentation, please, and Brian's to the 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh my
Michelle.
God, I'm within a minute. That's never happened.
Well done.
PB.
So there is some time then, if there are any questions from committee members for clarification. Councillor Filo.
It's not so much a question for the speakers, but just to ask the officers in response to regarding the questions. Would that be okay?
I'm mindful that we could do that in the other item around, so that we have more freedom to ask questions rather than
Okay.
use up the media.
Yeah.
Would that be suitable for you?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, so I'll make sure that that's you're top of the row when it comes to that. Okay.
Can it also be noted in the minutes how disappointed we are that Wellington Water are not here? Thank you.
I think you've raised your point, and it has now finished. 5 minutes is up now, Michelle. So thank you very much for coming along. Have yourself a good day. We shall move on to Brian Warburton. It is now your turn.
Excuse me, I know I'll need some of this. Okay,
When you're ready, Brian, go right ahead.
thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this committee. I just want to mention 3 points. Point number 1, network consent. Committee members will be aware that Porirua City Council requires consent for its wastewater network and in respect of discharges and overflows into the wider environment. Without consent, network discharges from Pump Station 35, which is Rukatani Point Pump Station, are unlawful and the Council is in breach of the RMA. I apologise for my questions, but I'm answering them, so they're not actually unanswered questions as such. But first question is, what has happened? A draft application for consent to network discharges and overflow was lodged in May 2023, but since then there has been no progress with processing. Wellington Water is the applicant for that consent. 350 working days have elapsed. This means that breaches of the RMA by Porirua City Council and Wellington City Council in respect to Pump Station 35 will continue indefinitely. At Pump Station 35, there are frequent, unconsented, unlawful discharges of untreated sewage. Why has this happened? Wellington Water has agreed with Greater Wellington's suggestion that processing of the network consent application should be postponed until hearings on Plan Change 1 to the Regional Natural Resources Plan are concluded and GW's decisions on submissions are made. Why does this matter? The implications of delaying the consent processing have not been adequately considered by Wellington Water, nor have they been communicated to the joint venture councils, let alone this committee. How can this committee make the judgment call? Is Wellington Water acting in the best interests of the council and the public? What is needed? Wellington Water's current report makes no mention of the ongoing unlawful discharges and related adverse health and safety effects and the corresponding breaches of the Regional Natural Resources Plan and the RMA. The report is also silent about Porirua City Council's and Wellington City Council's liability and also makes no mention of the timeframes I've mentioned. Wellington Water should be instructed to give a meaningful summary of the current situation with the network consent application and with specific reference to Pump Station 35. Second point I want to talk about is high-level planning. What has happened? The members of this joint venture committee are not being provided with comprehensive and current information about GW's policy initiatives and documents. Members are also not told about the associated implications of the joint venture wastewater network and the wastewater treatment plant. Why has this happened? I think Council and Wellington Water staff, Council staff and Wellington Water staff have in essence kept the committee in the dark. My notes previously emailed to committee members include more commentary. It's almost as if the Council and Wellington Water staff consider that high-level policy work can continue in a vacuum with no appreciation given to the day-to-day functioning and management of the network. Why does this matter? Councillors and committee members are not able to effectively represent ratepayers if they are not provided with relevant and up-to-date information about high-level policy work that has direct implications for the functioning and lawfulness of the wastewater network. What is needed? Wellington Water and Council staff should be instructed to amend their quarterly report templates to include subsections dealing with high-level planning by Wellington Water, PCC, GW and Central Government, and with specific referencing to Pump Station 35 and other parts of the network which are subject to the joint venture agreement. The additional subsections in this report would be able to address the various matters, including the uncertainty about Wellington Water's role. For example, Wellington Water and Porirua City Council have both made submissions on GW's Plan Change 1. This begs the question, is Wellington Water acting on behalf of PCC with its submission? If so, why does PCC need a separate submission? And if not, why is processing of the network consent being postponed while Wellington Water's submission is addressed? The committee may also consider that Porirua City Council should be the applicant for this consent, not Wellington Water. After all, PCC is presumably paying for the consenting costs. Point 3, unallocated funds. With the mothballing of the Winera to Onipoto Shed pathway, council officers have previously made undertakings to councillors to investigate the potential use of unallocated funds so Pump Station 35 could be appropriately upgraded. I understood Mr Mendoka would be providing the committee at this meeting with an update in this regard. There is no such update in the staff Wellington Water report to this meeting. I ask that this presentation statement be accepted into the official record of this meeting and recorded as such in the minutes. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Brian. There is no time left in the 5 million allocation, so there's all that's left to say thank you very much, Brian, for coming in for the public
Cheers.
forum. Okay, I'm just going to take a moment so I get my notes ready. Now, conflict of interests. I call for any conflicts of interest that need to be declared. There are none. Okay. Notification of extraordinary business. There are no items of extraordinary business. So, on to number 6. We've been asked to confirm the minutes of the joint committee meetings held on the 28th of May 2024 and the 27th of August 2024. You'll recall that we held the minutes from the meeting in May so as to have that corrected. So those are going to be both moved and seconded at the same, so seconded by Councillor Filo. When moved and seconded, we're going to vote on them all at the same time. So we have the minutes as a true and accurate record, moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, abstentions carried. Number 7, reports. 7.1, Joint Committee Wastewater Treatment Plant Report, August to September 2024. I will move the motion that the Joint Committee receive this report. Do I have a seconder? Oh, I'll go with Representative Allen on this occasion. All right, so what I'm waiting for is that the officers are bringing in Wellington Water's team, and we have our officers here from Porirua City Council. So we'll just take a moment while they come in and sit down, and then we'll carry on with questions. Chief Executive here as well. Yes, that's right. G'day, thank you. Also note that the Chief Executive of Wellington Water is also present for today's meeting as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for your presence here in today's meeting. Jeremy, do you want to make any comments before we go to questions?
I was just going to get Pat to introduce himself, if you don't mind, and then I do have a few comments before I can take some questions.
It's perfectly fine. Thank you, Pat.
Tēnā koutou. My name is Pat Doherty, and I've been Chief Executive of Wellington Water since mid-September. And it's so my background is I was an infrastructure engineer for the first 15 years or so of my career, and then moved into general management, and then I was CE of Kapiti Coast District Council for 10 years, and Nelson City Council for 5 years, and I stopped being a CE, I thought, at the end of 2022. But for almost all of my career, I've wanted to be Chief Executive of a Three Waters company. So here I am, living the dream. It's a lot of changes to be made, but it's a really good team that's very supportive of the things we're trying to do. So it's good to be back in the Porirua City Council chamber. Kia ora.
Kia ora everyone. So the report is for a shortened 2-month period. This was done to meet an agreed deadline with the Chair and to allow the Chair and the committee members time to review the report and submit questions. The next report will cover a 3-month period, but with the additional lag as a result of the submission process. So it's great to be able to report full compliance for effluent quality for the 2-month period in the report, and also for the additional month of October as well. This is despite higher than optimal mixed liquor in the process, and also we've had some quite large rain events which the plant has been able to manage well. So that's really quite a good thing to be able to tell you all for this reporting period. There have been some spikes in ammonia and nitrate that we're investigating, but this appears to be spurious, and we're following up on what is causing this issue, but we don't think they're actually, the results are genuine. I also can tell you that the new UV equipment has been continuously operating since July the 27th and has not faltered since that time. The equipment manufacturer and Veolia have spent quite a considerable effort trying to diagnose the earlier faults, and have made some minor changes in the control equipment as well as some of the mechanical components. So we're not exactly sure if we've fixed something, but we've got additional monitoring equipment on the UV equipment. So if we do have a further failure, we should have some additional information which will help us diagnose. I'm also pleased to report the construction for the backup power supply is underway, and we are on track to deliver before the end of January, which meets the expectations of the Greater Wellington Regional Council. So the review of the regional wastewater treatment plant has also been completed and is available on our website. And we have accepted the recommendations from the review and have developed an action plan that is underway, and that is also available on our website. So yeah, just any questions?
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. I'm going to open up the questions now. I'll go with Councillor Vila and then to Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. So if it's okay, I'll just sort of address what was brought up in public forum. I do have other questions relating to the report, but I might as well get them out of the way before they're forgotten. Yeah. I did want to start as well by just acknowledging the new format of the minutes to the staff, that they're very transparent. The level of detail it's appreciated. So thank you for capturing all that information. Yeah. With regards to what Michelle raised, I did at the last meeting, the last committee meeting we had, I did appreciate that we were able to submit questions ahead of time, and that we got the questions back in written format so that we could then prep follow-up questions. And so I just wondered what the rationale was behind not doing that this time.
I'm going to ask officers to respond to that specific part of the process. Mike, would you be comfortable doing that?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor. So this comes up regularly, and we have actually extended out the period before the meeting for which questions can be submitted. That actually has issues that Jeremy's already talked about with respect to the reporting timeframe. We actually kind of there's a bit of lag because of that. With the 20 or so questions that came in last week, they didn't quite meet the threshold for the timeframe that we put in place. So in discussion with Wellington Water, we decided to do what we could today, and then to make sure we didn't lose track of any of the questions that had been asked, we simply decided to use the Lagoima process to make sure that we were tracking them and didn't fail to answer any questions.
You can, happy for a sub-question, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. No, I get that, I appreciate that. But what I meant was the questions that you were actually able to, that you stated that you could answer in this meeting, what I'm saying is I would have, like for those to be in writing to us before the meeting. Yeah, that's good.
Understood. Apologise, and we'll make sure we reflect that in our subsequent to this meeting that's in writing.
Thank you.
I know you've got some more questions, so I'll allow you to continue, Councillor Field.
Thank you. So these ones are just following up further to the public forum. So I with regards to the July discharges that Mari spoke to, she mentioned that there were some discharges from the treatment plant in July, but that she hadn't seen any monitoring or sampling at the beach following those discharges. So I just would like, if officers could comment to that, whether that took place or if you can confirm.
Yes, so sampling is taken any time there is a discharge. Sampling is always undertaken.
Are they monitored or tracked on site, on a website or something that the community can?
Sorry, we generally don't post them, but we can. There's no issues with that. It's reported in our compliance reporting anyway.
Right, is that in the Veolia?
That's in the quarterly compliance reporting that goes to GW includes any discharge sampling.
Okay, thank you.
I'll jump in here. I think it may be useful to just acknowledge that sampling has been done, the dates that those sampling has been done, because I think it just enhances the transparency of the work being done. So again, whether that's conveyed in subsequent reports to this committee, or done through online, or both, or some other mechanism, I think that's important for moving forward. Sorry to jump in there.
Thanks. No, thank you. And then just my last one from Public Forum is just with regards to Mr. Warburton, who spoke before. He's put through a submission about the... he mentions about the Greater Wellington's Plan Change 1 and that the application for... Let me make sure I got my wording right. The consent for the network for discharges and overflows in the wider environment, and in particular at pump stations like Rukutane Point. He said that it's been the application's been delayed for 350 days, and that Wellington Water's agreed with Greater Wellington Regional to postpone this application until after the hearings for the Plan Change 1. So the first question is, I appreciate if officers could expand on why, like what's the reasons for that, and second, if they could comment on our council's liability within it, which he also references in his papers.
My understanding is the reason for the delay in hearing it is that the Plan Change 1 is so fundamental to the application that it's appropriate. The relevant regional council officers have agreed it's appropriate to delay that hearing until Plan Change 1 is through and resolved. With regard to the liability, I couldn't comment. Yeah.
Mike, if you wouldn't mind.
So Plan Change 1 is massive for us. If it goes through as proposed, the additional cost over and above what we're already talking about for the council is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. We're being very cautious with our approach to Plan Change 1 and trying to really insist that Greater Wellington takes into account all of the well-beings, not just the environmental, but the economic and social well-being for us as well, because there are two options. One is to, I think, try and achieve water quality within 20 years. That's going to cost us, I think, I can give you more precise numbers, something like $500 million. And if it is over 40 years, the cost is less, but it's still a very high price. So we need to be thinking about the financial implications of Plan Change 1, which is why I think it's appropriate that we ask GW to pause while we work through the hearings.
Any other questions, Councillor Field?
I'll leave it. I do have other questions, but I'll leave it here with the public forum, and I'll come back if that's okay, so others can ask questions.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Pat. Well done taking on the poison chalice that you've taken on. My question, just we were talking about the ammonia nitrogen, and did you say it's spurious results?
Yes, we've looked at the process throughout the plant, and we can't see any reason why the results would be elevated. We've also picked up from other treatment plant monitoring similar results, so we're following that up with the laboratory at the moment as to why we're seeing that change.
So with the moss and stuff that we're getting on Titahi Bay Beach, do you see any connection between those?
No, I do not see any connection between them, although I'm not scientifically qualified to comment with any expertise, but I'd be very surprised if there was any link.
Excuse me. So can I just add that that's why we're going to give you a written response to that question, because we need to double check with the scientific experts before we actually respond.
More questions? Representative Allen?
Just one question following up on the sampling post discharge. Can you confirm that samples are taken at the South End Beach?
The sampling positions are set out in the consent, and so we follow the consent, and I believe the South End Beach is one of the sampling points.
It is?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to maintain good order in this meeting. If members of the public want to have their say, they can have it. It's called the public forum. If you have a trouble with that, your door is always open. Representative Filo? Councillor Filo, I know you had the opportunity for questions. Oh, sorry, there's one. So there's an answer here.
Look, my statement was I believed it was. What I would suggest I do is come back with the actual sampling points in response to the question.
That would be useful. Thank you. Councillor Filo.
Thank you. So if we just go to point 7 in the report, and this is talking about the, I don't know how to pronounce that word, fecal chloroform, the non-compliance report for that. So my question is, how soon do you know that these levels have been overreached, or they've gone over what they should be? The report notes that this is potentially a breach of the consent and a risk to public health. So my second question is, what efforts were made to inform the public?
Fecal coliforms are sampled daily from the treatment plant. It's taken from a combined, they're taken hourly, and then the combined result is available daily. And when the consent, if a consent condition is breached, then we institute our normal discharge procedure and inform the public.
So just to clarify that one, it's taken as a grab once a day, and it takes several days for the results to be available back to the through the lab process. So it's not an instantaneous feedback thing. So it can take quite a few days to get the information back.
Right. Okay. So then it would be challenging then to be able to inform the public if there was a health risk because of the delay of getting your results. Is that right?
Based on the lab result, it would be. There are other indicators which are used to provide, warning or health advice, which we monitor continuously, like the transmittance, which can be used for that purpose. So it's not the only measure that we have.
Sorry, what do you mean by the last thing you said? The trans.
Yeah, the transmittance is a measurement of the light that's going through the UV. So that's continuously monitored.
So, I mean, I just want to be sure that because it referenced risk to public health, can you see like what kind of level of risk it is? Like, is it a high level of risk? Is it what kind of level of risk is this to the public health? July in particular.
I can't comment specifically on that one. I haven't looked at the numbers myself. It depends on factors like dilution and dispersion. So it'll depend on
first of all the levels and then which way the currents and tides are going. There is a reasonable amount of dilution and dispersion between the outfall and Titahi Bay Beach. The resource consent application went through a process of looking at reasonable worst case, 95th percentile of the consented levels and the effect, and determined that the discharge was reasonable.
Okay, I've got a couple others. Yeah, thanks. If I go to point 22, I just wanted to check that it is in alignment with the budget and so this is about the odour, that there's a contract or a tender going out for the design and the construct of the odour treatment work that's been done. So I just wanted to check if with the tender that it's still in line with the LTP budget, and also have there been contractual provisions put in place to ensure that the contractor delivers on time and on budget?
I spoke to the project director yesterday and she advised me that the tender evaluation is still underway. There's a recommendation to award, so but her indication was that it was within budget. I'm not familiar enough with that second part of your question to answer.
That's okay. Would officers be able to come back with regards to that and follow up with that one? I appreciate that.
I think it would be reasonable to request that.
My next question is point 24. Actually, sorry, it's point 25. So it's just regarding the pump discharges at Rukutane Point. So just at a recent AGM in Titahi Bay, Te Aramoana worker came and he raised concerns about the water safety for tamariki that are using local waterways. So he takes kids through different activities in our local waterways. So he found that just relying on the rainfall to judge safety isn't quite accurate, and especially just with regards to the pump station discharges affecting the water quality. I have raised this before, but I'm asking Wellington Water if there's a way that we can establish some kind of alert system to notify the community about or when there are discharges at the pump, so that the public know that it's safe to swim there.
It's not currently possible or practicable to do that. It is something that we will be working on. The best water quality information is from the LAWA website, which has a predictive scientific basis for predicting water quality. So that's publicly available. It's good information. If we have a fault that leads to a discharge, we will definitely notify that through all of our channels and through LAWA. But the best indication for water quality is LAWA.
Well, he did. I believe he did mention that at the meeting, and didn't find that was very accurate.
So I'll let Wellington will respond to that previous comment around the challenging nature of LAWA data as a reliable source for guidance for the general public.
LAWA is managed directly by Greater Wellington. My observation is that it's, if anything, it's conservative, that it will err on the side of caution for water quality advice. It's not perfect. Auckland have a more sophisticated system, for example, called SafeSwim, but it's the best quality water quality advice we can refer to.
Mike, did you want to comment on this as well?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. If I can just add to that, we've been aware of this issue for a long time, both inside the harbour and outside the harbour. And we're also aware that there are lots of data sets around water quality in ESR, Ngati Toa, GW, and Wellington Water, and of course Lawa. Lawa is informed by those, but we have a live project underway looking at all of those data sets with a view to trying to make it more accessible and provide a better picture of what the state of the water is. We've actually linked this to the Harbour Accord that you signed off last week and is going to Porirua next week, because we do think that we can do more with the data sets that we have. They seem to be quite spread out around the place. So we're trying to tell a better story. So young Ben Fountain, well, he's not that young, but Ben Fountain and my team is working on that. We hope to be able to bring that to you in the new year with respect to where we're going with that portal.
Sorry, can I just clarify on that? In terms of that kind of data set, you're hoping to, when you say the new year, are you saying the new year in terms of our committee meeting, or in terms of the broader council business? Because obviously it covers not just our committee, but it covers the entire waterways and the impacts of them broadly speaking.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. This is of great interest to all Poriruvians, so we see it coming back to a committee of council in the new year.
Okay, cool.
Carry on, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that update, Mike. Can you just clarify, though, when you talk about it within the harbour, did you say, when you say outside the harbour, do you mean Titahi Bay?
I do, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I also, too, I wrote this question prior to receiving the Rukatane Point initial investigation. So after reading that, I can also see that there are issues with the alarms, the monitoring that is being addressed in your time frame, your lead up for it. So maybe there's potential within, as those things progress, that there's some kind of alarm, some kind of alert system to the community if that happens, because for that to be considered. Yeah.
So we are responsible for a lot of pump stations and rising mains right across the whole region. And so while it sounds like you're asking for this pump station, the way our funding works, we'd be expected to provide that level of response for all the community that we serve. And we just aren't funded to that level. I mean, to commit to that sort of alarm system would be a big piece of work multiplied by a large number of pump stations. And to be honest, we have far more pressing issues in terms of making our water and wastewater systems sound than improving those alarm systems. So if this was to happen, it would have to be a request that would probably have to come through the Wellington Water Committee as part of the annual planning process. So I don't mean to be unhelpful, but that's the challenge we have, is that we work for 6 councils.
Can I just step in here?
Go ahead.
I think, notwithstanding the point that you've just made, Patrick, and I appreciate your positioning on that, it is still important to reflect, which has been mentioned by Councillor Filo, the concern of the community of the impact of a failure at that piece of infrastructure, as it would be if it was at the wastewater treatment plant, to a space which is frequently utilised by ocean goers of very different approaches, whether it's kids or adults or surfers or what have you. And I appreciate that you will probably come back and say that it's the same for many other sites around the Wellington region as well. Very true. But I am asking you on behalf of our committee to honestly take on board the reflections that we have on behalf of the communities, particularly those who are directly affected by that very risk, and are trying to act proactively and in good faith to try and have a system that keeps everybody safe from a public health perspective. I don't think there's any comment required on it, just to reinforce that point. Councillor Filler, do you want any more questions?
Let me just check. Thank you, too, that you basically said what I took the words out of my mouth.
Sorry about that.
No, that's good. Point of order. So I did have remember the question that I had with regards to the budget. Is it okay to bring that forward now?
So your rationale is because you wanted to, ask questions of Wellington Water?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I'll allow that.
So it's just with regards to the finances, which is on page 75.
So noting that this is in a latter item around the financial report of the plant, but that Councillor Phyllis had requested before the meeting started to ask this question in this part of the meeting.
Thank you. So it is just regarding the sludge handling upgrade, the capital projects, in the capital project section, which is just in the bottom there. So the 574K that has been put towards the solid handling, can you just clarify, is that solely related to the scoping of the work or does that include the design work that was mentioned in this report as well?
That will include the design work, I believe.
Design and scope. Cool. Thank you. So apart from that, I did have questions about the actual Rokutane Point initial the report that came through.
So,
Those were other
I
questions.
think that should be best covered in this item.
In this part as well?
Yeah, indeed. So
Okay.
if you have specific questions related to that report, I think it's appropriate to ask them in this section.
Okay. So,
Councillor Phil, if you want, I can ask my Councillor Duncan to ask his question, then
Oh,
we'll come
yeah,
back
go
to you. Would
ahead.
that be all right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Councillor Duncan, jump on in.
No, look, I just wanted to clarify about Te Aramoana Trust. I'm a trustee on that, and they very seldom use Titahi Bay. It's mainly the inner harbour they use. And after the meeting, I went to them and I said, so do you use the principle of when it's heavy rain, don't go in the water? Yeah, they do. And I said, so how many children are getting sick from what you're doing? We never have anybody getting sick. So they're not so far. So just for clarification there, Titahi Bay is very, very seldom used by them. In fact, if ever.
Appreciate that point of clarification, Councillor Duncan, as a former fellow member of that Trust's board as well. Councillor Philo.
okay. So just with regards to with the report, so thank you for sending that through. It was really good to get a gauge on where things are at. It was quite informative. So, and I appreciate the showing what is planned for short term and while that's going on, what you've got planned for the long term as well. So yeah, I just want to acknowledge that. So thank you for providing us with that and just kind of getting us up to speed with the situation at the pump. I found that really helpful. So first question, is this a report that would be available to the public at some stage? I know a few that would be quite interested in that.
Well, it's a quite a technical memo that we wouldn't normally make this level of detail available because it is a lot of detail. Having said that, it's public information, so it can be made available. So we provide it in that context.
So there is a report that was prepared by Wellington Water, but I'm just trying to remember the name of it. Where is it gone?
Yes, it is in the papers, Anita.
We are still on 7.1. A hard copy is being circulated. This was alluded to in report 7.1, though, in terms of the regards to the Rokutane Point pump station, and are covered in a range of paragraphs in that document you have had on notice. Mike, do you want to talk about this report in general, noting that I also would reinforce the point that it is public knowledge. There doesn't appear to be anything in there that would restrict it from being unavailable under the relevant legislation.
Oh, as Steve just said, I think it'd be discoverable if anybody asks for it. It's just that it's not normally the level of technical detail that we would make public, but there's no state secrets in there.
Can I also then further ask that we just add that as an appendices when we put the minutes together as well? So, Councillor Philo.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. It's more just I know there's quite a few in the public who's interested, who'd be interested in reading that. So, some questions. I just had a few. With regards to, So the monitoring period is so you've already put in a new pump, and there's one that's coming, and then there'll be a monitoring period to kind of gauge how things go. There'll be an investigative report coming or starting in February, I think I saw in the time frame. But my question is sort of how long duration do you think have you planned to monitor before an implementation, like how long are you going to monitor it before an implementation plan is put forward? Is that 6 months or?
I haven't got a firm date. Typically, you want to monitor a winter period to get enough information to see exactly what the balance of inflows and outflows and overflows are. So we have good information on the outflows from that pump station. The engineers have determined that we want better information on the overflows, and then to reinstate temporarily that inflow meter as well.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was good to see. So the next question is curious about how the monitoring progress is going to be tracked. Will telemetry data be utilised, and will it be accessible like on your website so that?
There's a couple of computer systems which will be used. Neither of those are linked to our website, so it would have to be. We can monitor them internally at Wellington Water, but it would have to be printed or transcribed somehow for external if that was required. Yeah.
Okay, so we would just mainly see it come back in when you report back to us. Yeah. I was curious about page 12, the rationale around. So it was talking about the sludge and how at the outfall you've got the pump that goes under the water, that's sort of discharged under the water, and then you've got the treatment plant outfall that's open. And that you can't tell, well, it's hard to tell if there's a sludge carryover, whether it's, and at the same time, if there is a pump discharge, which is which. So that was sort of mentioned in page 12. And I was just curious around the, and it did mention, the capital program that we've got going with the sludge handling, which is great. But in terms of the public health and safety, can you clarify which of those two, the discharge from the pump or a sludge carryover, which would be probably the highest risk to public safety, health and the environment?
Well, it depends a bit on how much comes out of which one, but generally the pump station overflow will have a more risk because it's got a higher degree of microbiological contaminants.
The pump station.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying. That is all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phil. Are there any Representative Allen?
Just one more question that came out of the public participation. I understand there was a flow meter that used to be at the southern end by the boat sheds or behind the boat sheds, which has been removed. Why has it been removed, and can it be put back? It had been put back?
There was a flow meter that was there for a couple of years as a temporary meter to gauge what was coming into that pump station. So it was removed as part of a rationalisation of all the flow monitoring we do around the region. It wasn't considered, we'd had enough information at the time. We are putting it back in while we've got the overflow meter in for this calibration that's been talked about, but it will only be a temporary reinstatement. It's not required for operational reasons. We have a measure at the pump station of what goes out of that pump station, and we know the level when it gets around to overflow level. So it was never intended as a permanent flow meter.
So did you just say it was measuring inflow to the pump station?
Yes.
So it's not measuring anything going out into?
No, there are permanent or installed flow meters on what comes out of that pump station, which generate graphs like that one on page 12.
Okay. Thank you.
Your Worship, Mayor Baker.
Just a quick question. Can you confirm, if we have an overflow, that we have signs that they are turned over by one of us, whether it's you, Wellington Water or Veolia? You know, if there's a standard overflow. Yeah, discharge.
So if we have a,
For the pump, for the plant.
if we have a fault at the pump station at Rukatani Point and it is alerted, then a member of my team goes out and manually opens those signs. If we have a discharge through a fault in the treatment process, then a member of the Veolia team do.
And just so to provide...
Just to clarify though, that's not for wet weather overflows. So this is for a dry weather fault.
And that's with regards to the operation of the plant, not the pump station at the moment. Understood. I'm going to jump in here and ask my questions if there's no other questions coming from committee members. I want to go to point 9 and around this investigation around the ammonium nitrate. Can we get an assurance from Wellington Water that this committee will receive all data relating to that verification process and more detail on the process adjustments as well? I appreciate the commentary that it may appear spurious and seems to be happening with a number of other plants at the same time, but I think for the sake of transparency, we would probably want to know to be settled with that issue. Can I get that assurance?
We'll update the committee when we know more, absolutely.
Okay. So then to point 17, how does the committee intend to receive updates on the progress of the odour suppression? This is similar to Councillor Filo's question, but I just want to get a sense of how we as a committee are going to get tangible updates in terms of progress. Is it going to be a graph like we have to do with our landfill in terms of the odour issues, or is it something else so we can kind of see that we are making meaningful progress in this space?
I can probably speak to that. We would supply the committee any report of odour complaints. The odour suppression system's in place, so it's not monitored in terms of usage, but we would supply the committee any evidence of complaints that we receive. Okay.
I want to move to point 21. So again, I'm just noting that it does say that this was due the end of November. Where is the update on this week? Is that the report?
We're just still finalising internally before we put it to council officers. There's been a slight delay on that. But there's a promising. The good news is there's a promising alternative to deliver the outcome, at least with a shorter term horizon within the budget.
But this may be for the council officers, I guess. Noting that this will also need to be sent to the broader council, can I just get some understanding of timeframes around this so that I know we don't have our meeting until January next year. I want some February next year. So we want to have some certainty that we can communicate this, that we are aware of what's going on sooner than that. Is that possible?
So this is one of the projects that is in your quarterly major projects report. So the next one of those won't be until the end of December. It's actually next month. But you won't be receiving that until January. So that's the next planned one. If the committee wanted something before that,
if there's already a scheduled plan for the council to receive this information, then that's fine. It's more about making sure that that is also dovetailed into the next committee's report as well. Sorry, I just need to go back to my questions. So point 31. So having read the broader document that came in that's related to point 3, I said there was a number of paragraphs. There's actually only one paragraph in the report that I'll notice that relates to this document. But anyway, so if I've understood this correctly, the second new pump is to replace an existing pump and or is it to add additional capacity as part of redundancy?
No, it's to replace an existing pump. Those pumps have got to the latter stages of their lives.
But there was some language in the broader recommendations about the likelihood that that may need to be considered part of additional redundancy as well.
Yeah, there was, and that still needs to be worked through. So for the moment, one pump was replaced because one pump failed. A second pump has been ordered, which should turn up in December to replace one of the older ones. So we'll have a spare older pump around as some redundancy, and then we'll work through and make recommendations on the upgrade from there.
Okay. That covers all my questions. Councillor Leggett.
Sorry, just a point of clarification when you talked about the sludge handling upgrade and you mentioned budget, within budget. Which budget? There's a long-term plan budget and there is an increased amount as well. So which one are we talking about? Just out of interest.
I was referring to the long-term plan budget.
Okay, that 28 million or whatever it is. Yeah, okay. Thank you. And while I'm at it, can I just ask one more question about the UV plant? And it's great that we're getting a backup supply. Can I just ask what discussions were had with Wellington Electricity over reasons for there being so many outages, and what did they do about it, and what are they still to do about it?
I'm not sure there has been any discussions about them with them on that.
So why did we not go to Wellington Electricity first and ask them why there were so many issues with electricity supply? Because I'd like to understand whether that part of Titahi Bay in that area were also experiencing them, or whether it was just the line from where supply to basically houses ends and then it goes to the UV plant.
We can follow that up with Wellington Electricity.
I mean, it's miles late now. It's miles late now, and I just assumed a while ago when we were talking about getting backup, which is sensible anyway, why we weren't at Wellington Water's throat in terms of asking why this happened and what. Oh, sorry, Wellington Electricity, not you guys. Wellington Electricity. And what the devil they're going to do about it.
I can talk. This was my area of training back when I was an apprentice, so I can say that it's at the very end of the supply.
Yes.
So it is quite prone to brownouts. And I mean, I know when we first took over the treatment plant sort of 10 years ago, I became involved in it. We had significant number of those brownouts that would cause the generator up at the treatment plant to start up. So it has been a very unreliable supply over the years that I've been involved with, but I will follow up with Wellington Electricity and just see if we can get an explanation.
Okay. Yeah, I would have thought they would have fixed any brownouts. I mean, because if people were experiencing voltage problems, would be further back in the network as well.
No, the way it works at the very end of the supply, you've got the largest amount of volt drop.
I understand that very well.
Yeah.
But okay.
Representative Allen.
Just two more questions. Can you tell me how often the bulbs in the UV system burst in a 12-month period? Do they, explode?
No, they don't burst, but they deteriorate over time. So they're on a program of renewals based on how many hours they've been in use.
Okay, so there's been no bursts. And just one point of clarification. Did you say the Lawa website is managed by Greater Wellington Regional Council?
The inputs to the Lawa website come from the Regional Council.
Okay, because I can see why that guy was very confused, because if you look at Titahi Bay South Beach Access, it says caution advised, blah, blah, blah. And then when you click on it, it says great day for swimming. So I'm not quite sure.
It's good. Yeah, it can be a bit confusing. There's a long-term, generally the site you need to be cautious at, but then there's the daily, they update it several times a day.
But you can't read the long-term one. It disappears and you can't read all of the paragraphs. So anyway, I'll email them. Thank you.
I think it's good, useful insight with regards to the usability of these spaces. Mike, you want to just update a correction or clarification rather?
Just clarify the numbers. Before I was a bit vague on the numbers for Plan Change 1. So for Porirua, the estimate for the increased costs of adopting Plan Change 1 are between 344 and $419 million over and above what we currently have planned. Not insignificant.
And that's in the 20-year window?
That's in the 20-year window, yes.
Okay. Oh, my. Any other questions on this item? So, look, thank you very much for coming in. I think, this is how it usually is. It's, very robust questions. We're not always happy with the answers you give, but thank you for coming in. So I'm going to move to the vote on this. But it's been moved. It's been seconded. The recommendation is to accept the report. I'll vote now. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, abstentions, carried. My voice just went right through the middle of that vote. Thank goodness you guys can hear. Let us move now. And thank you again for coming in, Patrick. It was I really appreciate that. Thank you. So let's move to item 7.2, the Spicer Landfill Joint Committee Update, July to September 2024. I'm going to move the motion that being that the Joint Committee received the report. Do I have a seconder? Representative Allen, nice work. Okay, so I'm going to ask for officers to come up, give them an opportunity for any additional comment to the items already on notice, and then we'll go to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the report as read. I've got no further comments to add to it, but happy to have questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Allen.
Thank you. Just a first comment, the odour complaint graph on the website is out of date. It hasn't been updated since August. So if you could get that updated, it would be great. Just regarding the alternate assessment report, which you also have provided. Thank you for providing this. It's good to actually finally receive it. It offers some interesting insights, particularly around the different technologies used internationally and also the views of Ngāti Toa. I've been away and I only just got back on Thursday, and so I've shared it with as many people as I could in Tawa, and I've talked to as many people as I could about the landfill odour, some of who have endured this issue for many, many years. While I realise you haven't confirmed your final approach, it seems that you're considering to applying for a consent to operate the landfill for an additional 5 years to 2035. Everyone I've spoken with, myself included, I talk to myself a lot, is strongly opposed to this idea, and we would oppose it to the fullest extent possible for as long as it would take us. The report outlines the criteria for establishing a new landfill, such as topography, distance from a fault line, and being at least 1 kilometre from a residential property. And as you acknowledge in the report, Spicer Landfill does not meet any of these criteria. But despite this, you still are looking at applying for a resource consent. We would strongly urge that you abandon this plan and focus on a solution that involves transferring residual waste to Bonnie Glen from 2030, if not before then. We've accepted this unacceptable odour for far too long. It has deteriorated in the last 2 weeks since the construction of the new cell has started. And my question is, could you please start planning now to close Spicer Landfill at the end of the current consent period? Thank you. That was more a comment than a question. But and I'm not sure if that's allowed, but
I appreciate the fact that you did put a question at the end of it, so at least you were in order on that occasion. I don't think anyone's going to be able to give you a substantive answer on this. However, it is on the record now, and I think that will be something that will be for council to consider in its deliberations. Just one question: did you have a chance to watch the full workshop session on YouTube about that?
No, I was overseas, and
don't worry, it's available on YouTube. So
I'll go back and watch it. Thank you.
Same for everybody else who's watching as well. Kia ora. Any other questions on this one? Oh, I have questions, but I'll wait and see. All right, okay. So I want to talk about the point 5, which is around tyre-wise. And I just want to know, first of all, where are these tyres going to? The part of the tyre-wise program. Obviously, before we were churning up these tyres and then using them in the landfill. Obviously, it's not exactly ideal. But where is it going to now? Is it the facility in Wellington and Porirua?
They are being taken away. They're being shredded, used for rubber products, matting. They are being reprocessed for new material. With regards to what quantity and to what destination, we will find out for you for the next report. We can get that from the Timecodes provider.
I guess I'm just mindful that obviously it keeps the tie out of the landfill, but there's obviously trade-offs on that as well with regards to the actual cost of doing that as well. But this is encouraging. The second question is in regards to point 9, still with Timecodes. Can we just confirm, does Timecodes also extend to commercial providers in Porirua as well? So for the Tony's Tyre Services. I don't want to name them specifically. I just, it was the first one that came to mind, sorry.
Yes, it does actually. From the back window of our current office, we look at one of the mechanics along Littleton Ave and have noticed the same truck coming in to pick them up on a regular basis. So yes, it is.
Okay. I'll go back to Representative Allen.
Through the chair, thank you. One question around point 10 and onwards to point 15, the Omnis Enviva Suite. Is the public interface available yet, and when will it be available? Or when will it be available?
Sure. We have actually just looked through the proposed public interface this morning. There's a couple of features that still need to be cleaned up, but it would be a matter of weeks away. And I would be hopeful of being able to demonstrate the public interface at the next community liaison group, which is the 10th of December.
Yeah. Okay. Another question. The air dispersal fan, has that started operating yet?
No, there's going to be a period of a few weeks where the position, the speed and the direction of the fan is experimented with relation to the wind speed and direction of wind around the landfill itself. So it's a matter of establishing a routine where we know we're pointing it in the right direction at the right time in the right conditions. But we would be hopeful of having it actually operating as standard operation before Christmas.
Okay. And one further question. I'm not sure if you're aware, but when I got home last week from my lovely holiday, a lot of people contacted me while I was on holiday, and when I got home to say there'd been an increase in odour last week and possibly the week before. And I certainly know when I got home it stunk, and it was stinking at unusual times of the day, like 11 o'clock in the morning. Do you know of any reason for that?
Yeah, Monday before last, I think the date was the 4th of December, the main gas flare. So there are two gas flares. The main one, which runs all the time, takes in just over 500 cubic metres of gas an hour, and a second flare, which is a smaller backup unit. The main flare had an electrical component that broke down Monday before last. That component was replaced by Wednesday. During that period, we had those conditions that bring the odour to the Tawa neighbourhood, and we did have quite an elevated spike in complaints. The electrical component was replaced. They had to be brought down from Auckland, and that was replaced by the Wednesday. However, we found, and I think it was the Monday after, that component had not been calibrated for that flare quite right. So the flare wasn't operating at proper capacity. So that was rectified within another couple of days, but during that period we had another odour spike.
So I'm just confused. Are you talking about the Wednesday straight after the Monday that it failed, or are you talking about the Wednesday the following week?
Wednesday the following week.
The Wednesday last week. Okay, which is why it was still stinking on Wednesday and Thursday. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, mine was just the biogas to the energy opportunity. So how's that progressing?
LMS is having some difficulty finding just the right spot to put the piece of equipment. So where we're at, as previously reported, we've got an agreement with them. The next piece of the work is to settle an agreement for the site as a lease. So we're now in possession of a proposed form of lease from them, and they're just working on all of the different areas around the landfill where they think it could be put.
Oh, cool. And one other question. It's not on the report, but I just was curious. I dropped off some lithium batteries the other day to the tip. What do we do with them when we collect them?
You can bring them into each of the council offices now.
Yeah, I mean, what does council do with them?
I can bring you a little bit more background on that. We've signed up with a company that takes batteries from all around the country. I'm pretty sure that some of the material that the battery is made up of is reused. Okay. But I can bring a more report next time, and also a statement to say at what rate or how many batteries we're picking up.
That would be good. I note it probably is in alignment with the work that's done at the Seaview site for larger car batteries, but I don't want to presume that it's not that being the case. I have Councillor Leggett, and then I'll come back to Representative Allen.
Sorry, just a follow-up question to Councillor Duncan in terms of the biogas to energy opportunity. So if the tip, were to close when 2030, would that impact the decision of the company to implement a gas to electricity scheme?
No, the company's confident of being able to extract enough gas for the period of the agreement.
Representative Allen.
Just with the spike in odours over the last 2 weeks, did the air quality monitors show any increase, or was it too soon to see that data? I'm not sure how often you can see that data.
We can see hydrogen sulfide level readings, ammonia levels, volatile organic compounds. We did note, looking back on the Omnis software, that there were corresponding peaks in each of those.
In both monitors, in the residential monitor as well?
Especially the ones at the landfill, but by the time you're looking at the monitor out in Westwood Drive, it's considerably dropped, but certainly you can see that something has happened.
There was a peak. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So I'm going to close questions, but I do want to make a comment which is regarding to the alternatives report. And now I alluded to that there was a workshop by full council where this report was discussed. At that meeting, however, a copy of Te Rangatira Tour was not available, and I've had an opportunity to read through it. There may be a question in here, but it's more about how managing the risk from a council's perspective, where options that look ideal from the analysis that's been taken by the Tonkin and Taylor report do not necessarily match up with what Mana Whenua has suggested as well in terms of the preferred option. And how does that work in terms of imperiling a potential consent application? Because I would have thought that the consenting authority is probably going to look very seriously around the cultural and environmental impacts that are alluded to in their report, in their recommendations. You can choose to answer it this occasion or not. I mean, I'm just making that point that hasn't been noted.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll just say that once we get into a statutory process, we follow the process. Of course, we have a partnership with Ngāti Toa, which we take into account. But there are a range of factors that we have to take into account in something as controversial as a landfill.
And indeed it is, and obviously you're hearing, local representatives reflecting their views of the community as well. I guess so. We've asked questions, but I'll give you an opportunity for comment. Absolutely, if you. Oh, okay. I'm going to then, we've done the questions, we've done our comment. We're going to move to voting on the motion, which is to receive the report. I'm going to give the vote. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, abstentions, carried. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David. I'm going to move now to 7.3. Wastewater Treatment Plant and Spicer Landfill Financial Report, July to September 2024. I move the motion that the Joint Committee receive the report. Do I have a second to look at that? Councillor Duncan, thank you very much. Officer comment, Ian, thank you for being here. If there's any comments in addition to the items on notice.
No, take the report as read, but just highlight there's 3 parts to it. So the usual JV1, JV2, wastewater treatment plant and landfill profit and loss, if you like, but also a third special in-depth drill down into carbon credits. I think that came out as a response to some earlier questions, and I know it's an area which just requires a little bit of deep thought to truly understand. So I've put that in there as well, just for your benefit. But I'll open to questions on any of those 3 parts of the report.
Thank you, Ian. Anybody want questions on this? Councillor Field, then Councillor Duncan.
Hey, thanks for putting in that extra info about the carbon credits, because, yeah, that was definitely something that needed clarifying, I think. Yeah. My question, though, is around it is in the landfill budget. So it's really a question of clarification around the capital projects. It's got Spicer Landfill, the C and D, and it seems like it is over budget by about 400K. But I was just curious because I thought that we were leasing the equipment and it was going to go to a contractor. So what's the story? Like, why is money being spent?
Sure. So there is a contractual purchase arrangement for the actual machine in place. So that is, in transit from Europe, I believe, not too far away. So there are payments that have to be made towards that cost of the machinery. We are entering into an agreement to lease out that equipment to a provider of the service. So there's a few things going on. That particular line is simply talking about our capital expenditure on that project. There are lease arrangements that sit on top of that, but that's not part of that.
Right. I know that David was just to give some additional response as well.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just a couple of happy updates. One is the machinery is actually in the country. It's with a company based in Masterton. Had the pleasure of watching a YouTube video of the main parts actually running and being tested. With regards to the capital outlay, just to remind the committee that we have succeeded in getting fund from the Ministry for the Environment to put towards the machinery. So there will be a point in time where we've currently made the main capital outlay at a point where the facility is actually running. So therefore we've made the lease. The company we're leasing to has it all up and running. We'll have the ability to draw down on that fund. So there will be a little bit of in and out when that happens.
You could almost do a profit and loss simply on that project. That line there is only talking about the capital spend, but on top of that there sits other financial entries, ins and outs.
Thanks, Ian and David. That makes sense. So it's sort of in transit, in progress, not just the equipment, but the numbers in a way we're just waiting for. So just curious then, was the equipment more than was budgeted for, or what?
I think that's more of about the phasing of the budget. You're never quite aware when the payments are required. Us accountants, we sit in an office and predict these things. We haven't quite got the phasing right. I think that's the answer there. There
is a factor of phasing. There's also the factor that we were planning to actually host the machinery at Spicer, so the budget itself was to accommodate purchase of the machinery, plus the actual siting of it and some of the setup costs. With the machinery now going to a private company as a leased, they will be paying some of that up front. So there will be a little bit of movement by the time we get there and it's actually on site and being used.
Cool. Okay, so it's being funded by Ministry of Environment and also...
Part funded, yes.
Part funded.
Yep.
And then will be, the leaseholders will then be paying money as well.
And the leaseholder, the lessee will then have their own premises. They will finish off some of the facility, but the key piece of it is the equipment which we've purchased.
Okay. Well, is any of it rate funded apart from the rates have to be dipped in?
Not rate funded, but paid out of the accumulated surpluses that this landfill generates.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
I have. Councillor Doug, you want to pull back a question or you're good?
Just a query about the carbon credits. When we go to Bonnie Glen, who pays them then?
Well, Bonnie Glen, but ultimately anyone who uses the services, it'll be built into the charges and so on. So, yeah. It won't be Porirua City Council or Wellington City Council writing out the cheque or making it'll be the new landfill, whichever landfill that is. Or users.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to ask my questions now, so hold tight. Point 17, it is actually about the carbon credits. Thank you again. I reiterate what has been said before. Thank you for giving a rather more elongated explanation of the situation. Before I go ahead, can I just double check, are there any known increases to the waste minimisation levy upcoming that we are aware of?
The waste levy is to increase by $5 for the next 3 consecutive years.
Right.
So it's currently hit 60. The current government has said another 15 over the 3-year period.
Okay. So if I've understood this item on notice correctly, in terms of the UEF 2026 Jan 1 is when it is next likely to change the formula. Is that correct?
Yes, not quite correct. So the levy we just referred to is separate from.
I agree. No, I'm talking about that. I'll come back to why the waste minimisation levy and the ETS are connected together. Yep. But in terms of carbon credit, I'm just talking about.
Sure. So the ETS charge, the UEF, is set on a calendar period. So we would be heading for the new UEF for the next calendar year ahead.
But as we've got a financial year, we cover the half year. Right.
That's been a bit of the balancing act in the in the past is catching up with a half and half, sort of the periods don't match.
To avoid the situation that happened last time in terms of there being assurances made and then all of a sudden a reversion or some sort of clarification of that UEF, how are council officers able to ascertain from the Ministry for the Environment? Well, it's not Ministry for the Environment, is it? It's well, let's just say central government, for the sake of argument, around trying to get clarity on what the upcoming UEFs are going to be. Obviously, they're probably not going to give it away because they want to set the price accordingly. But
it's not so much the UEF; it's the price of carbon.
Yeah,
and it's a market. We cannot, like any other futures, we have no special insight as to what's going to happen with the futures of carbon. The price has bounced down around quite a bit over the last 5 years. Seems to have kind of settled where it is now, but there are no guarantees, Chair.
The rationale why I asked this question is that in the report it talks about how the UEF basically, creates the effective value of the credits that we hold on hand and the amount of time for us to draw down from the balances that we have right now. So if you have a significantly higher UEF, then that means the amount of time that we have available to draw down the existing stock changes significantly. And the reason why I raised this concern is that in terms of the consumer who's going in to drop off their waste at the landfill, we are all expecting that the prices are going to go up. But is there not an issue around equity when it comes that we may be potentially holding an artificially high price on our fees based on holding on to a significant store of carbon credits because of a UEF conversion rate?
You're correct. Yeah, that UEF does effectively drive the value of how much we've got on our books. So at the lower rate, I think I calculated we've got 9 years of carbon credits just sitting there on our balance sheet. But if the UEF was to go back up to the 0.525, all of a sudden that comes down to about 2 years. So it is very it responds to that UEF very significantly. Who sets that and why and how, largely outside our control. So we are takers of those settings, and it changes from industry to industry. So landfills just happen to be this year, and something else, forestry, will be that this year. So we are takers of the settings. We're not
I know you
able
don't get to change it. I guess my line of questioning was about how well is our intelligence in learning or ascertaining trend lines around UEF changes, because ultimately users of the landfill are ultimately being charged. If that means potentially that what will happen is that we'll have relatively high fees for using the rationale for ETS charges that will not hold water with residents who, when we are holding so much stock on hand. Yeah. Jim, I know you're going to answer the question.
I'm not going to answer that question directly, but I just want to point out, this is a question so every Treasury Committee that we have, which is once a month, and the compliance reports are given to Council through the Audit and Risk Committee, we sit down with PwC and we review this very question. Have we got enough carbon credits? Is our carbon credit holding sufficient? Right now there's just too much uncertainty for us to be able to answer that question with what the government wants to do. So as the paper suggests, they're holding off what they're going to do about it. I think we'd review it once you know a little bit more information about the government's steps. But it is being monitored internally every month.
I appreciate that response, Jim. And it is alluded to in the item on notice. Well, I guess that perhaps my closing comment will be just to, again, while we are all aware that the cost of using the landfill for users is going to go up because that is the nature of the price signals that we are trying to send, they must maintain a degree of equity with regards to how we charge, and it can be justifiable, especially when we come back to doing a fees review / increase later on as well. I think I'll leave it there for that.
Yeah.
No more questions? No more comments? Look at this, we're almost here, eh? I'm going to then put the motion that we have received the report. It has been moved, it has been seconded, and now we're going to go to the vote. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, abstentions, carried. So we've got to the end of the business. There is only one thing left for us to do, and that is to have our karakia whakamutunga. So we will all join in and heartily recite. Toru whā, kia horo te marino, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, he huarahi mā tātou e te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou, ia tātou katoa, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora everybody, have a good holiday.